guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be kicking off a brand new series that I'm really excited about. I've been working on this for the last month or so, and I know I've hinted it to some of you guys in the comments of some of my other videos this month. You guys have been asking me what eyeshadow I'm wearing, asking me to create a demo or a tutorial for the look, and a lot of times I've said just be patient, I have a surprise coming for you, so today is the surprise. If you haven't already figured it out, I'm going to be taking a page out of some other YouTubers' books that I'm very inspired by, like Alana Davidson. I'm pretty sure she's done this on her channel, but I'm going to be doing one eyeshadow palette 3 ways. So I'm going to be basically reviewing eyeshadow palettes for you. I'm going to try to do one palette each month, and I'm going to show you in that review 3 different ways you can wear that palette. So create 3 totally different looks, and I'm going to show you a brief demo on how I created that look if you have that palette at home and you want to recreate it yourself. So one of my goals for 2018 is to use the makeup that I already have as opposed to constantly buying new products. That's not to say that I'm not going to buy any new makeup next year, because that is probably ridiculous and it's never going to happen. I do want to go on a no-buy for the month of January completely, but in general, I just want to try to use what I already have. If you guys watch my anti-hauls, I am constantly talking about how I have way too many eyeshadow palettes. I am going to do a declutter series in the beginning of January sometime, so I might end up giving away some of the ones that I have, but I guarantee you I will still end up with having 12, or between now and the end of next year, I am sure I will have no problem finding 12 palettes to review and create looks with for you guys. So this is my challenge to me, as well as it will hopefully be helpful to you, especially if you own or are considering purchasing any of these palettes, to kind of be a little bit more creative, see what they do, see what kinds of looks you can make with them, and then we'll also talk a little bit about the quality of the actual eyeshadows, what the palette's like, and whether or not I think they were worth buying, especially if I received it in PR or in a subscription box. I'll let you guys know whether or not I would have bought it with my own money. So for my first month of this new challenge, I decided to give myself something difficult. This is actually a pretty hard palette to create 3 very distinct different looks with, but that's why I wanted to do it, so I could show you guys that it was possible. So this month we're going to be talking about the Huda Beauty Mauve Obsessions palette. Huda Beauty just released, I think, 3 or 4 of these small 9-pan eyeshadow palettes around the holidays. There is like a smoky one, there is a warm toned one, this one, and then one that's like really bright, fun colors. It's like called the Electric palette, I think. So I definitely love these rosy, warm berry tones, but obviously they're all very similar, so it was very interesting trying to create 3 distinct looks of this palette, but I think that I managed to pull it off. But before we get into the specific looks and talking about this palette a little bit more, I just want to say hi and welcome to any of you who are new to my channel. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out and chatting beauty with me. I upload new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and then usually on Saturday I do some kind of vlog, usually shopping. I may do some different things going into the new year, we'll see, but generally I'm around, and I would love to have you back and hang out more on my channel. So if you're not already subscribed, click that little button down below before you go, that way you won't miss out on any of my future uploads. And in the meantime, let's get into this palette. So as you can see, this is a pretty small little palette. It's really like about the size of the palm of my hand. It is very compact and travel friendly. Inside you do get a mirror, and it has a nice sort of like magnetic closure. It's a cardboard packaging. Now, as small as this is, don't let the size deceive you. You actually get a fair amount of product in this palette. Each of these little pans has 0.05 ounces or 1.3 grams of product, which is almost about the same size, I think, is like a ColourPop pressed shadow or like a regular, single eyeshadow pan. I want to say that even though these are square and the pans look small, they're probably deep, which is deceiving. So there's actually probably more product in each of these pans than meets the eye. This palette is $27. You can find it at Sephora, and I would actually say it is a pretty fairly priced palette, and it's a pretty good value. Now, Huda Beauty's larger palettes usually have double the number of shades in this one exactly, and I was looking at like the measurements of the Desert Dusk, and I would say that there's slightly more product. Maybe some of the pans in that particular eyeshadow palette have a higher weight to them. but this palette is actually less than half the price of a Huda Beauty like Desert Dust palette, for example, which is $65. So I feel like Huda Beauty definitely chose a fair price, marking this at $27 for the amount of product and the number of shades that you get. Again, even though it's very small and compact, you basically have like no space in between the shades. So I think in a lot of other palettes, they may look larger because there's more packaging. This is just very, very condensed. So I actually kind of like that because it's super travel friendly and it doesn't really feel like there's any wasted space. Now in this particular version of the Obsessions palettes, you get 6 different matte shades and 3 metallic shades. Now the metallic shades in this palette are kind of an interesting texture. To me, they almost feel sticky. Like they don't have that same very slippery texture as some other foiled shadows. They do have a lot of pigment to them and they are highly reflective, but I feel like they do not apply all that well with the brush unless the brush has been dampened. So when we do the tutorial for So It Looks I came up with, I definitely tried to use, for example, like this very deep shimmery shade all over my lid and had to go back in with a brush with MAC Fix Plus to apply it because it just wasn't building up on its own dry as nicely as I wanted it to. But overall, my general thoughts towards this palette are that the quality of the eyeshadows are nice, they're very pigmented, they are pretty easy to work with. I will swatch this bad boy out for you on my arm and insert a close-up so you guys can see what they all look like. So here's what the entire palette looks like swatched. This is just dry finger swatches on the skin with no primer or anything, and I feel like in general this palette swatches pretty nicely. I think these 3 metallic shades here are a little lackluster without any kind of a glitter glue or like a setting spray or something like that to foil them. I definitely think that helps to intensify the shine and the pigmentation, especially of this lightest shade right here. The mattes I would say are buildable, but also pretty easy to blend. This one over here, this darkest sort of reddish shade, I find is the most dry to the touch and a little bit patchy. But I feel like if you work at them with a brush and you build them up, you can usually make the mattes look pretty nice. So now that you guys are a little bit more familiar with the palette, let's get into the 3 different looks that I've created. The first one is the one that I'm wearing today. With this look, I wanted to challenge myself to create a look that wasn't so intensely pink and berry toned because there are so many very sort of warm rosy shades in this palette. So I wanted to try to make something that was a little bit more matte and cool toned. So that's what I did today. With this look and pretty much all of the looks, I always start out with this matte cream shade and I applied it with a fluffy brush just all over the lid and up to the brow bone. Then I went in with a smaller shader brush and I packed this matte neutral brown shade all over the lid and kind of blended it up into the lower part of the crease, but I didn't really bring it up too high. Then I went in with this matte brown shade over here in, well, this palette's upside down right now, so this is the bottom left corner of the palette when you are holding it right side up. And this is definitely like a very cool tone, sort of like coffee brown color. So I use a slightly smaller like shader brush to buff this out into the outer corner of the eye. And then I would go in with like a clean fluffy brush and kind of blend out the edges. And I kind of went back and forth between building up the nude neutral brown on my lid and then adding a little bit more of this chocolate brown to the outer edge of the eye and just kind of going back and forth until I had the level of intensity that I wanted. Then I took what was left over on my brush with this dark brown shade and I just smudged it under my lower lash line. And then to add just a tiny pop of sparkle and add a little something something to this look, I took this lightest shimmery shade and just popped it into the inner corner of my eyes. And then I just added on some mascara. I didn't do any liner, lashes, or anything like that. And this is the look that I came up with. And honestly, I actually really like this look a lot. It's very cool and kind of smoky. This would be a nice like date night kind of eye if you didn't want something that was like incredibly wham bam in your face, very glamorous, because it still has a very sort of like classy elegance to it. But the dark like brown shade I feel like definitely adds a little bit more drama. So yeah, I enjoy this look a lot. I think it came out really pretty and it was pretty simple to do as well. Now for this next look, I wanted to amp up the shimmer factor a little bit. So I kind of see this look as being a little bit more dramatic than this one, but not as dramatic as the final look that we're going to create. This is a look that I was wearing in my anti-haul video in December this month. So if you saw this eyeshadow and you liked it, this is the look that I was wearing in that video. So again, I started with the bone color in this palette and kind of applied that all over the lid to the brow bone. That's kind of my first step in a lot of makeup looks, is just to set down my primer, concealer, whatever, and just to like create a smooth base to blend all my other eyeshadows on top of. Then I went in again with the brown shade in the middle of the palette on a fluffy brush, and I just buffed that into the crease of my eye. You don't need to be super precise with this. I just kind of wanted a nice diffused wash of color. Then I went into this shade here, which is actually in the top left of the palette when you're holding it, or right side up. This is actually, I thought in the pan it would be more brown, but on the eyes it actually translates more like a cranberry sort of shade. So I took this on a smaller blending brush and applied it just to the outer corners of the eye to add some depth and dimension. And then I went in with the lightest shimmery shade here and applied this all over the lid. I did apply this with my fingers because I felt that that would really intensify the pigmentation of the shade the most. It did definitely take some building up. When I played around with this palette again later to create the next look that we're going to talk about, I definitely found that foiling these eyeshadows worked better, but I didn't do that when I was creating the look that we're working on right now. So I went in and applied this with my fingers all over the lid, and then I went back with this shade again and I re-intensified the outer corners of my eye. I also took a small sort of little shader brush and took a little bit more of the shade right down close along the lower lash line just to kind of smoke things out a little bit. And again, I threw on some mascara, threw on some lipstick, and called it a day. I didn't use any eyeliner, lashes, anything like that in this second look. Then for my third look, I decided I wanted to go full glam, full drama, really pull out all the stops, get creative, and see what I could do with the shades in this palette. So I started again with the cream shade, applied that from lid to brow bone just to create a nice smooth base, and then did go again with the neutral matte shade here in the middle of the palette into the crease just as a transition. Then I took this mid-toned berry shade and I also added this to the crease, but I brought it down a little bit lower and also like maybe onto the top portion of the lid. So it kind of created a gradient from the brown into this berry shade. Then I took this deeper sort of cranberry shade. This one has a lot of berryness to it. It's a lot less brown. It's very intense. And I applied this to the inner and outer corners of my eye, starting to create that halo sort of shape. Then I went in with this super sparkly, really beautiful metallic shade in the middle row of the palette. And I went in with my finger at first and applied this all over the center of my lid. But as I mentioned before, I found that this didn't really give me quite the punch that I wanted, so I took a flat concealer brush, sprayed it down with MAC Fix Plus, and then went back in with this shade again and really packed on the color. I then went back in with my darkest shade here to just re-intensify those inner and outer corners of the eye to really make that halo effect pop. And then took this middle shade here on a small pencil brush and smudged that under the lower lash line. To add a pop to the inner corners, I went in with this lightest shade here on a little flat synthetic brush just to build that up in the inner corner of the eye. And then I threw on some black winged liner, some falsies, and made this look like extra super over the top. So I honestly have to say, I've had a lot of fun playing around with this little palette this month, even though there were only 9 shades and they're all very much in the same color family. You can do some fun looks with this palette. They don't all have to be super dramatic. They don't all have to be super over the top. I feel like you could even just use some of these like matte shades just very subtly if you wanted to do something that's a little bit more daytime appropriate. but you definitely can create some more dramatic looks with this palette for sure. Now, the one thing that I will say is that it does get a little monotonous if you don't want to be wearing like a berry toned eye every single day of the week. You're probably not going to reach for this palette all of the time. But in terms of something that like once a week or a couple times a month, if I'm in the mood to wear these types of shades. But yeah, I think the quality is good. I think that the price point is fair. I think I came up with some really fun looks. I definitely enjoyed this challenge and kind of seeing what I could do with the palette and making sure I used all of the shades in it so you could see what they all look like on the eyes. Definitely let me know in the comment section down below which of these 3 looks was your favorite. I would definitely be like really curious to see what you guys think. So thank you guys so much for coming and hanging out with me today. I hope you're as excited for this new series as I am to create it for you guys. If you are, please give this video a thumbs up. I really appreciate it. And also let me know in the comment section down below if you have any recommendations of palettes I should do in this series in the future. If there's any ones you would love me to see me create some looks with, I really appreciate your feedback. And again, if you're not already subscribed, make sure you click that button before you go so you won't miss the rest of the videos in the series and all the other fun stuff that I have coming up. I'm going to be doing my Best of Beauty series next week, which should be a ton of fun, and I have a lot of really awesome things planned for 2018. So I'm really excited to share all of that with you guys. And in the meantime, I hope you have an awesome rest of your day, and I will see you in Friday's video. Bye.